move on to the last two talks. So we're going to have a talk from Fuqi and Isuru from EMBL, the EBI. Isuru is, I think, is in the Seneca project, and they're going to be talking on the FAIRplus verification wizard.
Hope now you can see my screen. So in previous sessions, we have discussed, for example, tools for verification, how to assess the FAIR level of your data. But the aim is not always about getting a score. It's about how can I improve my data set to make it more fair. So when it comes to implementation, what we have in FAIRplus is we're trying to build a FAIR wizard to help to guide people through how to perform verification. And just some quick recap on some basic information about FAIR principle and FAIRplus. So FAIRplus is a three-year project which aims to deliver guidelines and tools to facilitate the application of FAIR principle. We have partners from pharmaceutical companies, IMA project, and SME companies, which represents a very representative set of stakeholders when it comes to FAIR. And so in our verification process, we recognize there are certain challenges in verification. The first thing is what needs to be improved. In previous discussion, for example, people notice through verification, through the assessment, their data needs more permanent identifier or better versioning strategies. So how do you recognize what the need is for verifying the data? Also, when you identify the need, where to start the whole process. After you have when I have the idea of where to start, how to do it, what resource does it take to implement FAIR? Does it, for example, which kind of domain experts are expected? What kind of resource or time is expected to see this verification? And also how this verification will actually improve my data set? Can I have a more objective view of the impact of verification? So these are the different challenges we observed in verification. And in FAIRplus, the way we try to answer all this question is we selected data sets from different IMI projects. Some of them have data on, let's say, transcriptomics data, bioactivity data, oncology data, etc. For each data set, we went through we'll work with them to identify what they need to verify their data, design verification process to improve their data and extract the knowledge into a FAIR cookbook. And the outcome of the FAIRplus project includes 4 major components, but we also have training sessions as well. So the 4 components are: first, what tools should I use for this verification? Some guidelines on how to do verification, and a recommended verification process, as well as approach to perform FAIR assessment. So when it comes to verification process, the FAIRplus verification process looks at this. It contains 4 phases. The first is about to figure out what you really need to verify your data. For example, if you are the owner of a data catalog, you will be more interested in how to improve the findability of the data. Or if you work with patient data set, then your verification goal would probably be how to share the data securely following GDPR or other guidelines. And then after we figure out the verification goal, we went through a project examination stage to identify what's the requirement for this data, what are the verification capabilities and resources available, how to and reproduce a verification backlog. Once we finished the project examination, we went through an iterative verification cycle. So before verification, we perform FAIR assessment to figure out, to know what level of FAIR this project currently is. And then we design the solutions based on our pre-identified FAIR verification goal and data requirements. After the implementation, then and implement them in the third stage. So after this implementation, we are able to go back and perform a post-verification assessment to actually see whether this data has been improved, how much it has been improved. Is there anything else which can be further improved? And once within the FAIRplus project, we're happy with the outcome. We invite reviewers from specific companies or IMA projects to review the outcomes and assess the success of against the original goals. That's the part of the verification process. Another section is about FAIR cookbook. That's where we put the experience and guidelines we had, the experience we have on verifying my data sets, and our recommendation guidelines on how to put FAIR principle in practice. And since Philip is here, he will probably introduce this in more details. I won't be the story here. So the next element is FAIR assessment. It can be used before and it is used before and after verification to identify the for project examination and evaluating the verification outcome. We have gone through the RDA indicators in previous sessions during the hackathon. So of all the 4 components we talked about, how do we connect them together and deliver a verification solution for people who are not involved in this project or who are not involved with FAIRplus? How can we apply this experience to other data sets? That's why we had the idea of the FAIR Wizard. It aims to deliver verification workflows that are tailored to specific needs and use cases. It helps projects to identify their verification requirements through a list of questions and FAIR assessment. Also, it recommends what resources are available to use for verification, such as process, recipes, or indicators. Compared with, let's say, in previous session, Alison talked about FAIR sharing, which has similar components or structures, but in the FAIR Wizard, what we are focusing here is how providing practical guidance on implementing FAIR, also to provide direction of verification solutions to cater specific use cases. That's the 2 unique things we are trying to achieve here. So, for example, the use cases for the FAIR Wizard would be, imagine I'm a project lead and I like my task is to write a data management plan to support FAIR across the whole life cycle of this project. Or I'm a data steward. I want to know general principles for data curation so that I can curate different types of data. So for different types of users, we can find different information in the FAIR Wizard. This is the FAIR Wizard homepage. You can access it from here. So when the different type of users came into the wizard, they will first go through either a list of questions or FAIR assessment to identify what their requirement is about verification, and the wizard will perform an internal matching and resource recommendation to figure out what resources are useful for your purpose, and then it recommends process, recipes, indication, tools. So let's have a quick look at the FAIR Wizard. So it follows the structure of the previous FAIRplus verification process. So the verification goal stage is the aim. The first stage in the verification process is about identifying verification goal. That's in this FAIR wizard is translated into the project examination stage. So in my case, I'm picturing myself as the second user. I'm a data steward. I want to get general guidelines on how to curate my data. So in this case, my role would be like a terminology manager. And since I'm a data steward, I already have data at hand. And we are working on integrating FAIR assessment into this wizard. So here up no. And when it comes to the curation, my focus will be interoperability and say data annotation. And for data annotation, I'm interested in which vocabulary I can use to annotate my data. And once you answered all these questions, went through project examination, assessment, and solution design stage, then the wizard finds and promotes what we think can be used for your project. So in this case, the wizard recommend me to go through a project examination, data type classification, and the focus would be around this corner: method and strategies, evaluation against standards, and interoperability requirements. So for each process, there's a diagram of a network of all the resources I can use. We'll go back to this one later. So for this data curation purpose, this wizard recommends me 7 recipes. For example, the first recipe is about which vocabulary to use. This recipe provides you guidance on how to select the most suitable artifact. From here, you can go to corresponding recipe in the FAIR cookbook. Or there are other things such as how to require new terms to ontologies because in your data annotation it's possible this ontology doesn't cover the resource you are looking into. That also leads to another FAIRplus recipe. That's the recipe recommendation section. And also to implement these recipes, this wizard identified several tools which you can use to perform data annotation. In this case, let's say Zuma. Zuma, it's a tool for mapping free text annotation to ontology terms. And here you can go from the wizard to Zuma and perform ontology annotation with Zuma. There are also other services which you can explore. And the third element of this recommendation is if you follow the process above, the recipes above, and use the tools, what can you expect? What difference will it make? So here, we also recommend. So all the operations above are actually targeting these indicators. These are indicators from the RDA data maturity models. So by performing data annotation, you are actually working on making your data metadata expressed following a specific community standard, and you are also targeting on making your metadata use FAIR compliant vocabularies, things like this. So these are all the resources it recommends. It also, instead of providing the resources as static lists, the wizard actually shows the connection between different solutions. Maybe this is I've extracted a more clear layout to allow us further zoom in this diagram. This is the same as the previous diagram, resource network. So the blue boxes here are about verification process, what process is relevant to your solution. And the green dots here are about tools, what softwares can be used for your purpose. The gray dots here are recipes which can be used, and the yellow ones are indicators. Here you can see there's a zoomed in version of this verification process. For example, from this ontology strategy box at the bottom of the screen, you can see it includes different processes such as ontology management, ontology strategies, ontology annotation, engineering, etc. And when you work on ontology strategies, this resource is linked to recipes such as which vocabulary to use, how to perform ontology annotation with Zuma, how to perform ontology mapping. And by applying this recipe, it requires software robot. And this, by implementing this recipe, you will be working on towards improving indicator metadata used for compliant vocabularies. So all these resources will be connected, and such a relationship will also be used in our resource recommendation process. So the summary, the key features of the FAIRwizard, one is all the FAIRplus resources we mentioned are connected and represented in RDF format, in which can be found in the network. Also, we tried to build a standard approach to identify the use cases through a set of questions organized as decision tree or through FAIR assessment. And another element is curated solutions. So when you see the original recommendation, these are automatically selected resources, but how reliable are they? For example, some recipes might have the correct label or relationship, but they might be less directly relevant to your use case. So in this case, FAIRplus will also build a list of curated solutions. So we identify the most common verification use cases from the FAIRplus verification experience. And for each use case, we manually curate a high confidence set of solutions. For example, in this collection, the common use case would be how to perform ontology annotation. And the manual curated resource list would be, here are 5 recipes we recommend, and here are the high confidence resource we recommend. You see the list has been narrowed to a high confidence set of resources. And besides curated solutions, there's also potential for adding other training materials or resources to this wizard. In the wizard resource collection, currently we only host resources produced in FAIRplus, but it also can plug into, let's say, data standards in FAIR sharing, tools in BioTools collection, or connects to the ABI training materials, if the training materials are about verification, about FAIR implementation. So these are the key features of the wizard. And if you can access the wizard through this site, and as you can see, we don't have a proper domain name yet, so it's still in early stage development, and we really welcome early stage user feedbacks. So in this session, we designed a survey which helps us to figure out what the users are expecting the wizard to do, and what are the common concerns or interests in verification. So I will post this link to the survey later. If especially for cohort data, if there are specific verification topics you are interested in, or you have some verification use case you'd like to share, or for cohort data, there are some training materials you'd like to contribute, you're very welcome to put that in that survey. And the wizard is currently public available on GitHub. If you have any technical feedback or you'd like to deploy it on your own set, you can check the source code there. And I'd like to thank my colleague Isru, who worked on the wizard development, and we are supported by the FAIRplus project and ABI, as well as Sinica project. And that's it for my presentation. I will share the link to the survey in this chat. It would be great if, yeah. So any questions or comments about this Fair Wizard?
Thank you. That looks extremely useful. Any questions? You can chat, or you can raise your hand, or you can just unmute. So the one link that you provided looked like it was a temporary link. Is the whole thing sort of finished? I mean, the survey that you provided, that isn't the link to the actual tool.
I would. So I'll also share the link to the actual tool. We haven't got a proper domain name, but it's a permanent link. And it's still in early stage development, and I believe we will find a nice domain name in the future.
Great, thank you. Any questions from anyone? Okay, those links are there, and what I'll do is I'll put the links that are coming in from the chat into a document. We'll try and capture those so that people have them available. Any questions, comments?
I think a quick question. So I work with Fuqi, so I know the Fair Wizard, but I don't think we've considered, training materials or things like that with respect to fair assessments, because we don't really have training material data type coming in from FAIRplus, and the wizard does not put a FAIRplus. Do you think, and maybe that's a question for Sarah and Saskia, do you think it would be of interest to you to be able to evaluate those types of resources there as well?
It could be. I mean, I think what it might be good, Melanie, to get together to show you kind of what we've created so far in terms of our checklist and start to see, whether that fits across maybe. So maybe we can catch up some point and show you what we've done so far.
That sounds great. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So would that just add to one of those lists of tools then in the assessment part, I assume?
And maybe Fuqi wants to comment, but I think it would be at the beginning, the different data types that you would be able to select from, perhaps. Okay,
yeah, that makes sense, because it's really at the start that things start to go wrong. Yeah. Where you actually need, what we found with this and with the previous hackathon is that it actually really needs to be tailored to what it is you're assessing.
Yeah, that's right. And Fuqi always say it's not a binary fair. It's fair enough or fair for the specific data type or use case you're looking at.
Yeah, I think regarding verification suggestion for data types, so what we have right now, so that should be one important part in the project examination stage. However, currently our training materials, the recipes are in our cookbook are, we have some recipes for specific data types, but most of them are for general dataset verification. So And that's also one purpose I was brought the wizard to this hackathon. So we'll be very happy if there's more material on cohort data verification, which then we can also curate those resources and design more specific solutions for cohort data.
That sounds great. So I think this tool is just really useful for all the different bits and pieces we've heard about yesterday and today and tried out yesterday and today. It sort of guides you through the various processes, puts it on one place. I think that's really useful. Lyndon said he can't access the Google survey. I think there must be a permission issue on that. Are there any more questions or comments?
Yes, this is Phil. Maybe a quick comment coming up on Melanie's suggestion. I think it would be great. Actually, it's great. I think we should follow up with Saskia as well, since we could evaluate our own recipes. I will touch upon that hopefully on my presentation. But since this is training material as well, we should definitely align the practice. That would be really good, and document that.
Excellent. Good. Well, there's another output then. Okay, any other final comments? You can put your questions in the chat anyway in the meantime.